Hi everyone, if you're thinking of building or renovating, then this is the place to be. Hi, I'm Nikki Verrill, CEO and founder of Totally Wicked Group, and welcome to the Totally Wicked Q&A Live. We have had a bit of a hiatus for a couple of months due to lockdowns and being sick and more lockdowns and weddings. It's just been crazy. So it is awesome to be back. Tonight we'll be talking about how to choose finishes for your new home or your renovation, depending on what you're doing. So we'll be talking about selecting tiles and splashbacks, skirtings, how to select your colours, door hardware, a whole heap of different things. And of course, if you have any questions, ask them and I will do my best to answer. We will be getting started officially soon, giving the stragglers a chance to sign in, make sure no one's missing out. Thank you for all of you who are on time. And if you know of anyone who's building, renovating, doing some DIY, even just painting, please tag and share because this will be really, really beneficial. There's a lot of information in here that we're going to give to you, but you need to share it and you need to ask questions, otherwise it's not as valuable. Also, if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing and links to our previous videos, as well as checklists and things that we send out, a whole heap of useful information, please subscribe to our subscription, our mail subscription, where you'll get updates on when we do our next live. They're usually every month, pending lockdowns. And we also send out some useful checklists and things as well. So sign up for free and we'll keep you in the loop. So if you are doing any renovating, or you're thinking of building a new home, or maybe you're in the process of choosing plans, can you just write in the comments what project you might be working on now, if you're flipping houses or thinking of painting, that sort of stuff, and what you want to know about tonight, if there's anything really specific. So while we're waiting for people to sign in and share and get organised, just want to talk about why we're doing this. The more I talk to clients, the more I realise that there's a lot that they don't know, and it's a lot of not knowing until you've gone to the end of the process. So if you're building your home for the first time or doing renovations for the first time, you don't know what questions to ask normally. So the whole point of these videos is to give you more information, or at the very least let you know what's out there so you can ask the right questions of your builder, your designer, or your subby. And we normally try and do these once a month and get either myself to give you information, or I interview someone who's in the know. If you check out our Facebook page and our YouTube page, you can see some of the previous ones where we were talking to landscapers and finance people and building inspectors and the like. So we're going to just keep continuing doing those sorts of things. Just so you know, there's no hard sell. Well, I'm not going to say to you at the end of this, hey guys, sign up for this account, $200 off, blah, blah, blah. No, this is legitimately, I'm just giving you some free information because I think it's almost a community service actually. But general disclaimer though, this is general information. So don't go ahead and do a full renovation without getting a professional advice. This is meant to be giving you the information that you need to ask the right questions of the right people. By all means, you can call us and ask us and we can look after your project for you, but this is general information. So everybody, please like and share and comment. Alex, are we live? Are we getting comments through? Because I've only seen Totally Wicked say hi. Just double check for me. Just want to make sure that I don't miss out on anything. But I'm just going to get started. One of the questions that I hear a lot, especially for people renovating and they get to choosing their finishes, is where do I start? And I think the easiest way to answer that is inspiration is key. You need to really have a clearly defined direction. And trying to explain to a tile supplier or a colour consultant what the type of colour you're thinking about, or what the mood is, or what the style is really, really difficult. Whereas if you go onto something like Instagram or Pinterest and you find something that you like, or maybe even something you don't like, and create a collage, that's actually really, really helpful, and it gives you a clear indication of what it is that you want, as well as your significant other or the other people living in the house and the people that you're working with. So visuals are really, really important, and it's a great place to start. I've had some clients, sometimes there's a specific piece of artwork that they have to incorporate because it has some sort of a value to them. Maybe, you know, they painted it, or it's been passed down from generations or something like that, or maybe it's a piece of furniture, so that can also help as well. But inspiration is definitely key. You really need to start there. Yes, like a mood board. Absolutely. What is the difference between Sheens? So Carolyn, I showed you this before. I was actually gonna put this in later, but it's really, really interesting. This is like a, it's Dulux, not that I'm, you know, saying Dulux is sponsoring us or anything, but this, I've had this for ages, and this was one of those things that in the architectural office, this was like the stapler. You never ever let it out of your sight because it'll go missing. So, I don't know if you can see really clearly, but that is the exact same color, but it's a different sheen. So some of these are gloss high levels, some are low gloss, some are low sheen, some are matte, and they're exactly the same color. You see how different that looks? This is the type of thing that you really, really need to know about when you're picking your finishes. It's not just, oh, I want that color on that wall. It is stuff like this, and it's also what lighting are you using? What does it look like in natural light? What does it look like with yellow light or really bright LEDs that have a high lumen? Very, very different. So using things like this when you get your paint colors, really, really useful. And getting sample pots and painting them on your actual walls where you're going to be using them. And I always say, like, paint them on each wall because they are likely look differently depending on where the sun's coming in, where your lights are, so you can actually get the color that you really, really want. So, good question, Carolyn. So yes, back to where do I start? The other thing when you're starting to choose your finishes in your room or in your whole house is think about which elements are the features. So for some people it's the flooring. For some people it's maybe a really big concrete bench top that their entire family can be around to cook Christmas dinner. It might be connection to the outside, so it'd be more about plain white walls but with huge open windows, or large bifold doors, those sorts of things, which again you have to choose, and you'd have to choose the paint or powder coat colour of the frames. Those sorts of things. There's a lot to think about. So picking those few key must-haves, key focuses, will help the rest of the mood board and the rest of your finishes work together. And it's much, much easier picking one thing and then having the rest complement each other. So now I'm going to get a little bit more into picking colours. So I'm just going to share my screen so you guys can see. go. So, this is our blog where we've got a few tips and tricks, and I'm just going to go to this one we did about paint colours, which should answer your question, Ian. So I was just talking before about low sheen gloss, semi-gloss, matte, flat, showing you the difference in the colours. So here we actually have where each of those go. If you really want gloss on your ceiling, you can, but generally it's not required. Usually all of these things come down to maintenance and what sort of look you want. So low sheen is the standard for most houses. If you're doing one colour throughout the whole house, I would normally just paint the whole lot low sheen. Gloss or semi-gloss you would use for your doors, arcs, and if you're doing feature walls used to be a really big thing. Every room would have a feature wall. These days not so much, used a little bit more sparingly. Sometimes it's sort of to show off a piece of artwork, those sorts of things. Wet area walls or other areas of walls are frequently cleaned, definitely a gloss, semi-gloss. Matte, again, I would normally use a low sheen, but sometimes you do need a matte surface. I would probably only do that in like really big houses where you do need to buy lots and lots of tins of paint, and you want to maybe save some money, or there is a very specific reason for not wanting light reflecting much off of the walls. And generally you would paint your cornices and ceilings the same, and if you've got, say, a cupboard under the stairs, you would normally not bother with low sheen unless it's some leftover paint. You can get away with just doing some ceiling paint on that because it's not seen outside. I hope that answers your question, Ian. But one thing I really wanted to show you in here is picking colours. Like I struggle with it as well. There are some people that are just like people who can draw really well. They're just naturals at it. I'm not a natural. I had to learn how to draw, and I'm a little bit like that with colours. So some people are excellent with colours and others need a little bit of work. Now I can go through the science behind it, or I can just show you this cool thing. So this is called Coolars, and if you go to our blog, there's actually a link for it in the colour generator, and Coolars. And you can use this for anything really. If you're creating a logo or want to choose a palette for anything. I know some graphic designers who use this. It's awesome. But it just sort of gives a bit of an idea of colours that can work together, and you can, like your inspiration board, take this into a paint supply store and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking at, and they can try and colour match it for you. So disclaimer, these are not actual paint colours, but they'll give you a really good idea. So what you can do, which is really nifty, say I like this grey colour, I'm going to lock this grey colour, and I'm just going to hit the spacebar, and it changes all the other colours around it that suit, or maybe not, but that generate around the mathematics of this colour that I've locked. So now I might go, okay, I like that cream, and I just keep going through. Maybe I'll go, no, you know what, I only want 4 colours. And you can just go through and, oh, I like that one better, and just pick the sort of palette that you're looking for. And it does go through a few crazy ones. Go, and, oh gosh, I don't like any of them. I'm going to get rid of this one, see what happens. If you want to, oh, see, there we go. Look, it's so much fun. You can waste so much time here. but it's a really good communication tool. Just change this, there we go. Yeah, so it's a really good communication tool, like I said, so you've got everybody on the same page. Even if you don't choose these colors, it is a great thing for you to take into a coloring consultant and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, question from Jenny. What's the easiest to keep clean when you have children in the house? Okay. Gloss generally is easier to clean, but it's also harder to touch up. So if you have a gloss or a semi-gloss and you want to repaint the walls later or even do touch-ups, you actually have to sand down the whole wall and then start again, depending on the quality of the paint, of course. So generally the low sheen works okay for that, because I'm a firm believer in making things so that they're easier to upgrade or maintain. Sanding down an entire wall in your bedrooms or your hallways, it just sounds completely horrible, as opposed to just washing it down with sugar soap and then starting again. I did have another train of thought about that. Easiest to keep clean, have children in the house, painting. No, it'll come back to me in a minute. Something super important. That's okay. Next question. Does the lighting used in the house matter for finishes you use? A lot of older houses use fluoro and new houses have LEDs. Yes, the colour of the light that you use is very important. Sort of comes back to this. If you look at it in different light, and what I was saying before, if you look at it in natural light compared to a yellow light, artificial light, down light, it will definitely look different. Also the amount of lumens. So a lot of people focus on watts when they buy lights, globes, but I focus on the lumens because that's actually about how bright the light is. So if you're doing something like it's a workshop or it's in the kitchen where you're actually going to be doing something that requires light task, that we're actually, you're chopping things up, you need to be able to see what you're doing, I go for a higher lumen. Whereas if you're in a bedroom, say, where you might sit and read, then you're more likely to have a softer, lower lumen, because you'll have perhaps a light on the wall where it's right there and you're reading. You don't need the entire wall, the entire room lit. Okay, so I'm just going to click this again. We'll go back to here. Another thing that is important for some people is accessibility. So color contrast is really important if you have a vision impairment. This could be true for grandma as well as someone who actually has a really diagnosed vision impairment. So if you have a white wall with a white door frame with a white door, they're not going to be able to see that door. And if you think about it, if you have children and you're getting up at 2 a.m. every morning and everything is white, you're more likely to run into your wall or your door. So there is a whole heap of math around it, but I prefer to have some form of contrast, even if it's just minor. So something like this, if this color here was your architraves around your doors, that could make a reasonable amount of difference in the night, or at least, you know, like I said, grandma or grandpa, when they're getting up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, more likely to be able to see it. Whenever you are choosing your colors, supersize your samples. So start with something like this, and choose, you know, maybe the main color and all the different shades, and then ask them to give you a big A4 size or a sample pot, because there's no way that that tiny little swatch there is going to show you everything you need to see to make an informed decision. It's just going to shock you when it's painted. Okay. If anybody has any more questions about paint, please ask. If not, I'm going to move on to things like skirtings and architraves. So, bear with me, I'm juggling a bit here. Hello, so I have talked before about how your foundations are really important and planning is really important, but finishes are equally as important. So if your foundations are set, your house is all built, it's all laid out really well, and then you just go, yep, whatever with all the finishes, it's kind of a waste of time. So things like skirts, skirting boards, architraves or arcs, cornices, very important, because they are the types of things that we see but don't notice unless they're wrong. So it's a little bit like the cherry on top of the cream with the cupcake. You know, it's this whole big thing. If you don't have the cherry on top, it's not quite as special, I think. So if you have gone through your inspiration and you've picked, say, a Victorian theme, then you need to pick cornices and skirting boards and architraves that all reflect that theme. If you're going for a really clean, modern look, then going for a decorative cornice, probably not going to work. You're better off with a coved cornice and plain style architraves. Equally, if you go with something really, really decorative around your ceiling and then something really, really plain around your doors, it's the type of thing that you're probably going to walk into the space and go, there's something wrong, but I can't quite pick what it is. So there are many different options. There's MDF, softwood, hardwood, tiles, vinyl. It all depends on what your theme is and what your floor, wall and ceiling is all about. So if your ceiling is quite plain and it's just plasterboard, you can get away with plaster cornices. Again, if you're going for something that's really specific style, so a lot of the Queenslanders, they're probably gonna, you're more likely going to use something like a hardwood with a decorative finish, because that's gonna suit the old style of building. And especially if you've got the decorative vent holes above the doors, and sometimes they have them low down as well, but usually they're above the doors. So it's really about picking the things that suit your theme. Also make a note of saving time if you're doing DIYing. A lot of cornices and skirting boards you can get pre-primed or pre-finished. So if you're not actually going to be painting them any specific change in colour, if they're just going to be white, then you can get pre-finished versions. Just make sure it's the right colour white and you're happy with it. There are thousands and thousands of colours of white. In fact, I might even open up the Dulux Atlas just to show you. It's nuts. In fact, yes I will. What is a cornice? Oh yes, so a cornice is where your ceiling meets the wall. To cover that joint, there's usually a cornice, and it's normally in some form of profile. You can actually get away with not having a cornice. I'm pretty sure it's called like a square set finish. I don't recommend it for residential builds, just because buildings tend to move quite a bit, especially if it's a timber or a steel frame. But if something's precast concrete in a commercial setting, it's less likely to move quite so much, so you're not going to get cracking happening there. But cornices are meant to hide that gap and prevent you from seeing any separation or crack. And it also helps with acoustics and ventilation to try and seal off each of the different rooms from one another to outside. Okay, so I will just share this again. I'm just going to go to, again, I'm not condoning Dulux, but they just happen to have what I need right now. Oh, no, what are you doing? So these are a whole heap of shades of white. And look, we've got a whole heap of shades of neutrals. These are just the popular ones. I know full well there's a whole heap of others. No, it's not going to give it to me. You see how endless these colours are. So if you started with something like the coolers and you walked into a paint store, you bypass all of this. It's much, much easier. Okay. Next one I've got on my list is how do I choose door hardware? So again, a lot of people when they think about renovations, they think about choosing their kitchen cabinets and their bathroom tiles and their bath and all of that sort of thing, and then forget about door handles. I actually think door handles are quite important because while we live in our houses, we actually don't really interact much with them from a tactile point of view, whereas door handles we touch all the time. So door handles, light switches, cupboard benches and things like that, bench tops and stuff. Those are the things that we touch, we actually interact with. And I absolutely hate going into a beautifully renovated, say, bathroom, and to get in, I touch the really, really cheap rounded door handle that sometimes, you know, after time just falls off in your hand. Also very dangerous. I have been locked out of my bathroom several times because of those really cheap door handles. So I think they're really, really important. There's heaps of different materials. You can go with brass, chrome, stainless steel, matte black, and there's a whole heap of different styles. So say stainless steel, you can go with a brush or a polished. And again, if you've got your inspiration in mind and you've chosen something that's, say, I'll just keep going back to the Victorian or the heritage style, something that's a little bit more old school, brass will look fantastic. If you're going for something a little bit more modern, then chrome is really, really shiny, but my personal preference is stainless steel, just because stainless steel lasts a lot longer. Rust on chrome handles, even though stainless steel is not quite as shiny compared to chrome, side by side stainless steel will win the war. I remember my mum and dad did just a small renovation of their bathroom, and the toilet roll holder they changed, and it was only 12 months old, but the stainless steel door handle on the door was 20 years old, and it was exactly the same. They had no reason to change it, and it looked brand new because they just cleaned it regularly like you normally do, and that's fine. Also, if you're living in a coastal area, even if you're, say, 100 k's back, and you might get some high winds or salt spray or things like that, always recommend stainless steel because chrome will not last. Even internally, it just salt gets on everything and just corrodes. Even stainless steel can have issues in coastal areas. I personally think that it's much sexier to have something that's a little less shiny but doesn't have rust on it, as opposed to something that's shiny and just covered in rust or spots. Yeah, so stainless steel is also really good for hygiene, which is quite poignant right now, given what's happening in the world. Much easier to clean. Matte black, though, has been making quite a big comeback. There's a post, I think it might have been a couple of posts actually on our Facebook page about matte black door handles. They are a really good new modern style and can work really well for feature doors, so maybe entry doors into your home, as well as doors leading out to your outdoor area if you don't want to have them throughout your entire home. Yes. Another thing that people don't really think about is the function of your door handles. So there's so many different types of door hardware that you can specify, and it's really important that you're clear with what access you want to each room, especially if you're doing a new build, because normally they will just do specific door handles and door lock types and just have it the same for everything unless you specify otherwise. So what I'm talking about is privacy, keyed, passage, dummy, and smart locks. So they're all very different. Obviously anything that's keyed has a key with a lock. So your front door, you're gonna want a keyed lock system and handle. But a privacy set is normally something that you would have in bathrooms and bedrooms, where you would shut the door and you'd have just a little snip that you'd lock from the inside. If you have kids, especially if they're toddlers and they like to slam doors and lock themselves in their room, probably not a good idea to have a privacy set on your bedroom doors. So you can specify a standard door, a door handle. So that would be a passage door handle. So something that just opens and shuts, opens and shuts. There's no lock, there's no nothing. If you have something like a dummy, that is literally a handle that doesn't move at all. So that could be the type of thing. And again, if you've got a specific style and you wanted something that's a really beautiful, very old school style handle for, say, your linen cupboard or a pantry door that really ties into everything, that would be a dummy handle. And of course, smart locks. Smart locks are the tech locks where you can have app entry and keyed entry with a code, whatever. There's so many different options. I also think another thing you need to think about is if you're having a home office, especially again with the way things are going at the moment, a lot of people are realizing having a home office is a great idea. You might want to have a key to that office. If you've got kids running around, or maybe you might even want to rent out a room or something like that, having a key to a bedroom or an office could actually be something you can specify during your home build to have that delineation between work and home. Cool. All right, any more questions? Ask some more questions. I'm just going to keep going because we're going to talk about tiles now. I'll go back to our blog. Bearing in mind that this blog is now open to everybody, so we'll anyone who's on our newsletter will get a link to our blog and you can check out all the awesome stuff that's on there. I'm just gonna share again. Okay, so, oh yes, tiles, be bold. So, tiles. Tiles are just like paint colors in that they are a huge Pandora's box of selections. There are a whole heap of different types and a whole heap of different ways that you can lay them out. So again, if you start with your inspiration and want to do something that's a feature, changing the layout of the tiles can really help to create a feature with very minimal effort. So we'll just go through a few of them here. So these are all the different layouts that you can have. Obviously, some of these are dictated by the shape of tile that you choose, but typically this is sort of the stock standard, just lining everything up, stacked horizontal. But if you do something that's just a little bit different, like here, the herringbone, this does work really well for things like splashbacks, because when you're looking at, I'll just do this so you can see me, when you're looking at a kitchen, your splashback is generally at your eye line, even if you're sitting down at say an island bench or something like that. So having a splashback as a feature is actually a really great idea. So doing something like the herringbone, especially if you select a grout that is a contrasting colour, it really stands out and will really draw your eye to it. And let's face it, if you're spending a lot of money on your tiles, you want people to look at them. So that's a really interesting one. The only problem with it is because of its layout, it does tend to cause a bit of wastage because of the way that it's you've got to cut each of the tiles around the rectangular square, which it normally is. Actually, I might just see if that one works better. That's better. So you can see it. The stretcher bond, so this is very much like brick layout or block layout. This is quite good in the older style if you wanted to tie the inside and the outside together. Obviously that's the stock standard. This one's quite interesting. It's a third offset, so you're not actually doing a half tile with a half tile like the stretcher bond. This is really great for floors when you've got a tile that's a timber look. So normally that's sort of the way that timber would get laid out because the boards are not the same length, whereas tiles are. So this sort of gives that illusion or helps with the illusion of the tiles being timber look. So again, it's the type of thing that once you choose one thing, or like you start with your inspiration, you go, yes, I want a timber look floor, then that can help to dictate what layout you choose, what your feature is. So it's this step-by-step process of just eliminating all of these options at each step that you go. Stacked vertical, just slightly different. This one's a bit interesting. This is a pinwheel or a hopscotch. This is where you have one tile that's really quite small and then the other tiles around it. This is good if you want just a little accent. So if you wanted just a little of colour in there, you can do that with this little square and then have the rest around them. This is great for patios if you wanted to just draw a little bit of attention. A little bit more old school though, so you've got to be really careful about where you do those sorts of things. And we are almost done. If anybody has any more questions, I think that was the last one on my list. Yes, it is. So there's a whole heap of other cool stuff in here. So I do go through things like the difference between it's loading. The difference between all of the different tile finishes, because if you walk into a tile store and have no idea what vitrified is compared to ceramic, then making a decision is really, really difficult. So I won't go through all of this because we've only got 5 minutes left, but it's really important to have in mind what your budget is and how you want to weigh up cost saving and longevity. So anytime there's anything on the floor, I always try and do it so that it is the most durable and the colour is through as much as you can, because there's nothing worse than having something chip just the top of a tile and then you see a completely different colour underneath, especially if it's a grey or a black. It really shows up. So that's when, if you go with a vitrified tile, it's usually more hard wearing, and if you go with something that is let me go down here, say textured and then the chips are less likely to show, and you can get ones that are, I'm just trying to find where it is, yeah, double charged. So double charged, where you get a double layer of colour, so that the top colour goes deeper down. So when you do get chips and things, it tends to be the same colour. You might get away with not viewing it if it's got texture on it. What is the best finish for a shower? The gloss is the traditional finish, but I feel like the matte might be almost better for a non-slip, etc. Okay, so the actual finish sort of doesn't really matter. There is an actual Australian standard rating, and it's called an Rlp rating, a slip rating or pendulum rating. I actually pretty sure I talk about it in one of these. You need an R9 minimum for residential buildings. And again, if you walk into a tile store and say these are for bathroom, for the bathroom floor, you can actually ask for the data spec sheets. I always recommend an R10 or an R11 for proper wet areas like in a shower. Sometimes that doesn't actually happen. And one thing I will always say, I'm sure I wrote this in one of these, I just got to find it, is never ever use wall tiles on the floor. I've seen that done before, and hardly ever are wall tiles suitable for the floor. They're normally thinner because, you know, they're on the wall, easier to lay, which means that they're less durable, they can't handle foot traffic, they can't handle things being dropped on them, so they're more likely to crack, and they are less likely to have a higher R rating. I think it's in here. Yep, there you go, application. Never use wall tiles on the floor. Same sort of thing with splashbacks. Textured tiles on the floor tend to have a higher R rating, but sometimes you can get a gloss tile that has a texture into it, so it's still glossy, but they've specifically made it with the right sort of surface finish so it can be used on the floor. So you're trying to get the best of both worlds if you still want a gloss floor, because glossier tiles reflect more light, makes things nice and bright. So you can just go to your tile supplier and ask them, just be aware of those R ratings and make sure that you're choosing the right tile for the situation. That is also especially true when you're doing indoor-outdoor areas. Pavers tend to be thicker, they're at least 30mm thick, and they need to have a sand base underneath them, and they're generally designed for outdoor use. You can use some thin tiles, like 10 to 20mm tiles, outdoors, provided they have that R11 rating minimum, and that they are installed properly. So they would have to be on a floor structure, usually a slab on ground situation. You can have them on a substrate, on a raised deck, those sorts of things, but always use a paver if it's in contact with the ground on a sand bed, and use tiles on some sort of substrate. If you coat tiles with, say, a non-slip, does this alter the tile colour or sheen? generally, yes, it would, but it sort of depends on what the tile was to begin with. I have seen renovations where they have like good quality tiles and they've just resprayed everything. So usually gloss is quite difficult to maintain with those sorts of things, obviously because it's been covered. But I can have a further look into that as to what base tile would be best for that. I would imagine something textured would probably be the best, or something non-porous, but I will have to check that one out. But definitely, yeah, I would say it would change. In the situations where I've used it, it has. Subtly, but if you spray everything all the same, then you don't notice it. So, bonus. Can I have different types of cornices in different parts of the house, or does it all have to be the same? So I'm a firm believer of making one style and sticking with it. But that being said, it really depends on the type of house. Ultimately, you can do whatever the hell you want because it's your home. But I think making things continuous tends to bring everything together and not sort of shock you quite so much. You could use different decorative cornices in areas that are more grandeur, I suppose, so like entryways, or if you've got a two-story where the stairs lead up, and then maybe in the bedrooms they're more subdued, so more like a coved cornice. So I think if you were going to do it, I would perhaps split the different areas of the house into different groups and then decide how you're going to do it from that. So more the public areas being one sort of style, and like I said, the entrance areas, or the areas where you're really sort of transitioning, and it's when you're transitioning into a different space, you tend to go looking around for the next area that you're going in. So that could work, but I generally go, whatever your theme is, stick with it. Okay, so I think we're all good. So if you have any more questions, Jenny, I'll have a little bit more of a research on that and ask a few experts about that and let you know. But if anybody has any more questions, feel free to post them and I will answer them later. If you are not already subscribed, please subscribe to our mail, our email, yes, where we send out all of the stuff afterwards, so you get copies of all of these videos and reminders to the next videos that we're doing. So the next one's going to be about choosing the right builder. You also get any of our checklists and access to our blogs before they become available to the public. So lots of great information. Thank you very much, guys, for being on. And again, if you know of anyone who's doing any building or renovating who could benefit from what I talked about tonight, then please like, share, tag them, all that good stuff. I want to say thank you to Hawthorne Creative for doing all of this great work. I have a mic here, it's very professional. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a totally wicked evening.